Hello, I'm Andrew Pritchard, and thank you for watching today's Canada Regional Forecast, brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Checking in with the jet stream here on Tuesday morning. We're watching this big upper level trough that's sitting over the US and Canada border. We've got a surface low pressure here over Manitoba and Quebec that's been bringing rainy, windy, and cooler conditions to those off to the east. It's bringing cooler air into the Midwest once again. But over time, we're going to watch this ridge begin to kind of regain control over the western half of the United States, and that's going to allow a little bit of warmth to return to at least the southwestern portions of the Canadian prairie here as we get into the early part of September. But the next 5 days, keeping cooler temperatures overall across the region. And then again, here as we get into the first 5 days of September, watching the jet stream do something a little bit more like that. We'll build some warmth into much of the western United States, and some of that will creep into southern Alberta, western Alberta, and perhaps southern Saskatchewan as well. The precipitation forecast, again, we're dealing with this upper level low over parts of eastern Manitoba now, really sitting over Quebec. That's going to be continuing to move off to the east. It's going to quiet us down here across the prairie for the most part. Not going to be bone dry over the next week, but as we get through at least the end of the work week into the weekend, precipitation going to be rather sparse, going to be isolated and light in nature. Until we get into the week 2 time frame. This is going to be getting into beginning maybe this weekend, early next week, and then certainly into the later part of next week, kind of resuming a more active pattern. But again, that's way out in the future, 7 to 14 days. So let's focus in on the week 1 time frame. Looking at the satellite picture here on Tuesday morning, here is the big upper level low spinning away, and we're talking about this storm system all the way from the Canadian prairie into the southern US, because we've got this front extending through the Great Lakes into the Midwest, and then off south of the picture, we've got a huge area of thunderstorms across parts of Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, Missouri, and into Illinois. So we talk about the Midwest and into the southern plains of the United States. Refocusing here on the Canadian prairie, I'll take some of the drawings off. This upper level low kind of spinning away, keeping cloudy and cooler conditions across much of Manitoba. We're watching kind of the jet stream. You can see the flow within the jet stream right here, just looking at the satellite picture. It's kind of cool. We'll have one more disturbance kind of quickly make its way through here Wednesday and Thursday, bringing maybe an isolated shot of a shower to parts of the prairie. And then really, again, watching this ridge kind of regain control over the western 2/3 of the U.S., but again, bringing some of that warmth at least back into the southern prairie here as we get into the weekend. Looking at the radar picture here on Tuesday morning, again watching some of this rain activity across parts of southwestern Saskatchewan, southeastern Saskatchewan I should say, anywhere from Regina to Brandon in Manitoba, and then over towards Winnipeg. Again, this upper level low just spinning across the region, counterclockwise flow within the atmosphere. And then here's the next little disturbance that's going to quickly kind of follow through, cutting across the Canadian prairie, but struggling in the way of deep moisture to work with. And so that's why, again, precipitation going to be rather sparse with this next one. Looking at the upper level picture, then 500 millibar height anomalies. Let's go ahead and bring it back. Here's the upper level low right now as it stands right now, kind of situated over the eastern portion of the area. And as we get into the middle part of the week, here's this next system, kind of the next disturbance, kind of rotating in on the back side here, Wednesday into early Thursday. That gets out of here. And then we watch this ridge kind of build in, but this doesn't have legs. I am fairly confident in that. It's going to be a kind of a progressive pattern as we head through the next week or two. Already, as we look at this thing here on Saturday morning, watching another disturbance that's going to come in here and kind of flatten out the top of that ridge. And that's why we don't see, or why I don't expect the heat to really regain control here across the Canadian prairie. Over the top of this ridge here, it's going to be a little bit too progressive across the Canadian prairie, keeping storm systems kind of moving back through the area and suppressing the really strong heat off to the south. So let's play this out a little bit further. We're taking it through Saturday. Here comes that next disturbance. This is when I think we kind of resume, or at least the early stages of another active phase here across the prairie. This system kind of clips through maybe over the weekend into early next week, watching another potential disturbance making its way in before we see another kind of significant trough potentially develop here mid to late next week, bringing some cooler weather back into the region, again, mid to late next week. So the upper level pattern that kind of follows with this, here's the strong upper level winds associated with that first trough making its way through. Here is the next disturbance. It's going to kind of go up and over the top of that ridge and then through the prairie here over the next 24 hours. Let's go ahead and we'll step through time with this as well, bringing it back to Tuesday morning, getting through Wednesday again. Here is that next little quick moving trough getting through the area here Wednesday. As we get into the weekend, watching that ridge kind of build back into the southwestern edge of the prairie Here's that next disturbance, though. You see the core of the very strong winds beginning to blast ashore as we get into early Saturday morning. This thing kind of sneaks through as we talk about the late part of the weekend into early next week. Before again, kind of we see the ridge kind of, I would call it the axis of the ridge right through the central U.S. at this point as it begins to lift off to the east slowly. And again, kind of watching this area for another surge here to bring in some cooler air as we get into the middle part of next week. The temperature anomaly forecast here over the next week or so, again, keeping things pretty cool across the Canadian Prairie, aside from this region right here. We'll go ahead and we'll play this out slowly so you can see the trend. Again, bringing it back to Tuesday morning. Here we go. Taking it into the middle part of next week. Watching that reinforcing shock come in here Thursday. So cooler as we head into the late part of the week. It's as we get into the weekend now. Talking about Sunday, watching some of this warmth kind of return to parts of the Canadian Prairie here. Strongest off to the south and to the west. Now we're looking at Sunday here. You're really starting to see some of those warmer colors here beginning to show up. Again, off to the south, we're talking about southern Alberta, southern Saskatchewan, closer to average up to the north, so maybe bringing it closer to seasonally appropriate levels over the weekend. But again, kind of waiting on cooler air to return as we get into the mid to late part of next week. But maybe some unseasonable warmth across southern Alberta and southwestern Saskatchewan over the weekend into early next week. The precipitation forecast, here is the big upper level low right now that continues to spin away, bringing rain and windy conditions to Manitoba for the day on Tuesday, and then perhaps lingering into Wednesday. Really, let's go ahead and bring this back. You'll also see this next quick moving system emerge here as we talk about getting into Tuesday and Wednesday. Here comes that other system. It's in southern or central Saskatchewan Wednesday afternoon, quickly getting out of here. It's out of here by Thursday morning. So again, just maybe a quick shot of some light rain through this corridor here for the day on Wednesday into early Thursday. And then high pressure moves in on the backside over the weekend. So really quieting down here Thursday, Friday, maybe a very light shower possible in some areas, but really drying out through the weekend. And then it's as we get into Sunday and Monday of next week. Here's that next area of low pressure moving through near the Canadian and U.S. border, bringing some precipitation back to the Canadian Prairie early next week. So it looks like as this system emerges, really probably going to be quieting down across the Canadian Prairie in terms of any significant precipitation all the way through the end of the week into the end of the weekend before we get to the late part of the weekend into early next week, when we kind of start to kick an active pattern back into the region. Of course, details are going to be a bit hazy as we talk about that far out. So since we're not talking about any significant precipitation until we get to the end of next weekend, we'll really address that more in our Friday morning Canadian regional forecast. So the total accumulated precipitation for the next week or so, you'll see a couple of the features that I noted here. We'll play it out once, and then I'll bring it back to the beginning, and we'll step through time. Here is the upper level low right now, situated over the Quebec and Manitoba border. And then here comes the next system. You'll see it dive through right here Wednesday into Thursday, bringing that little stripe of some light precipitation to the area. Mostly quiet as we head through the weekend. You're seeing some very isolated shower and storm chances here across parts of the prairie here as we get into the weekend, but the significant rain chances, they really hold off until we get to Sunday and Monday of next week. Let's zoom in on Alberta now. We'll take a look at the total precipitation forecast. Here's that Wednesday system, and then maybe an isolated shower possible over the weekend, but really watching for the next quarter of significant rain to come in late next weekend into early next week. The high temperature forecast for the next 5 days, anywhere from the upper teens to the mid-20s. Some pockets of cooler temperatures to be found here off to the north for the day on Tuesday, Wednesday. And then looking at Thursday, really cooler overall. It's as we get into the weekend, starting to see some warmth kind of re-emerge off to the south, anywhere from the upper 20s to the upper teens for the day on Saturday. Looking off to the east, Saskatchewan and Manitoba, here we go. Here's the upper level low, bringing significant precipitation to this region here for the early parts of this week. We'll go ahead and we'll step through time with this one as well. So here is the first system here Tuesday. Getting into Wednesday, here's that little stripe of light precipitation that comes through on Wednesday. There you see it. And then we get into the weekend quiet. It's not until we get into Sunday and Monday of next week we start to see some more significant precipitation begin to pop up. Your high temperature is very cool off to the east. Cool, rainy, windy for the day on Tuesday. Warmer off to the west, anywhere from the upper teens to around 20 across Saskatchewan for the day on Tuesday. Warmth kind of creeping in advance of this quick moving clipper on Wednesday, seeing the cooler air begin to take hold on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, starting to see some of that warmth build back into the region with high temperatures again in the upper 20s south to the upper teens off to the north. As always, Eric Snodgrass will have an in-depth look at the evolution of the next 1 to 2 weeks in our Thursday morning ag forecast video, and I'll have your next check-in with the Canadian Prairie Friday morning. Have a great day and the rest of your week.